So hello, um, my name is Elika Ansari. I am the author of this book, Seacity Rising, A Tale of Unwatery Adventures. I'm really happy to have been asked to read for you guys today. I will just start by giving you a little introduction about the book. So Seacity Rising, first of all, it is a fantasy story. It's appropriate for ages like 7, 8 plus, I would say. And it is the first in a trilogy, of the Seacity trilogy. The other two are not out yet, but they will be at some point, hopefully. The second book will be called Seacity Shatters, and the third one, Seacity Gone. But today we're just focusing on this one, so I'll tell you a little bit about this. So, what is Seacity? Seacity is a pond. It's the name of a pond in an unknown location. And this pond, for many years, has served as home and refuge to a number of underwater animals, like fish and turtles and newts. And it is also home to Bobak the frog. Bobak, I don't know if you can see him very clearly. He's right in the middle over there. So Bobak is, he's a bit of a loner, but he loves reading about stories about adventure and legends and heroes, both from water and from land, and he loves playing at adventure on his own. But he doesn't have very many friends, and that is partly because he's the only remaining frog in Seacity. One winter, a couple winters ago, all the other frogs mysteriously vanished from the water, from Seacity, and nobody knows why or how it happened. So poor Bobak, he just makes do with what he can. One night, he's just going on an adventure, and he goes to he tends to go to the most secluded part of Seacity, where nobody goes, because otherwise there'd be staring and maybe laughing. So he tends to go to a place called the Dark End, and it's the dirtiest part of Seacity. It's where all the garbage and trash collects under the water. So he's there playing at being on an adventure, when he suddenly comes across something quite interesting. It's like a crystal, a vial, and inside there is a scroll. So he uncorks the vial and he rolls out the scroll, and what he sees is a prophecy. So part of the prophecy he can make out. It's written in plain language that all the Seacitians can understand. And that part says that something terrible is about to happen to Seacity. Something that has the potential to destroy Seacity and all its inhabitants. But what that something is not clear. The rest of the prophecy is written in the tongue of the water gods, which Bobak cannot read, and actually no other Seacitian has the capacity to read. So, needless to say, Bobak is really anxious, nervous. What do I do? Who do I tell? He racks his brains and he finally comes up with the obvious answer. I must take the scroll to the Turtle King, because if anyone will know what to do with it, it's him. So he swims as fast as he can to the palace in the middle of Seacity Pond, this being all underwater, of course. He comes... He gains access to the palace, not without challenges, but for the sake of summary, I won't go into that. And he presents the scroll before the king, the princess, his Princess Lo, his daughter, and the king's niece, Lee the turtle, who are standing at either side of the king. And he says, I found this scroll, and it says something terrible is coming to the pond. What do we do? So the king takes the scroll and he considers it. The next day he calls a general council meeting with a bunch of the Seacitians present that normally wouldn't be. A lot of the ordinary citizens of Seacity are present in this meeting. And the king announces, I have cracked the rest of the scroll, the part that was written by the water gods. And we now know what it says with the help of a seer. And what it says, it's a rhyme actually. So what it says is the following. Of water you all are, but on land you shall be three. Your answers you must seek from the old woman beyond the sea. So everybody's like horror struck, like what does this mean? And what are you asking us to do? And the king like silences them all and says, it's very clear what it means. It means that three amongst you is supposed to go up to land and seek the answers that we need to save our home. And everyone gasps in horror, like, how could you ask us to do that? We at Seacity is all we've ever known. We've never, like, there's no precedence of anyone ever going up to land. And again, the king sets order and says, it is written, so it shall be done. And we already have our first volunteer. And he presents, the first volunteer is his very own niece, Lee the turtle. So Lee is a very headstrong turtle. She's very strong and athletic. She has a heart of gold, as we will see later on, but she has a very tough exterior. The king asks for the second and third volunteer to come forward. So the second volunteer is Goldfish. His name is Dr. Goldberg. And he is a scientist and he's a genius. So, going up to land for him would be an opportunity to expand his research and his awareness in general. So, Dr. Goldberg comes forward and the king says, that's fine with me, but how are you going to cope? Clearly you can't survive out of the water. And Dr. Goldberg says, you just leave that to me. And what he actually does is very clever. He devises a mobile home, a crystal bowl that has wheels at the bottom that can move around quite easily on land. Well, not so easily as we will see in the book, but easily enough to keep him alive and to keep him going. Then the king asks for a third volunteer. And there's silence. So the king looks towards Bobak the frog and says, what about you, son? And Bobak's like, no. I can't, I have no skills, I have nothing to offer. I think I would just prove a burden. And the king is not convinced, and he says, I have a feeling that you might play the biggest part in this quest yet. And so just like that, Bobak is also selected to go. So it was supposed to be 3 volunteers. In the end, it ends up being 4 because Lee and her cousin Lo, the princess Lo, they're quite inseparable. So Lo sneaks along in her backpack as well. And so the adventure on land begins. And the 4 of them, they meet many different animals and they have many different adventures. They race against a runaway tortoise. They meet land mice and they fall in love with native mice theater, and they bring peace to a colony of warring ants, two colonies of warring ants. But each step is taking them closer to the truth, and every time they meet a group of new animals, they find out that whatever they're coming closer to the questions they're seeking, to the answers to the questions they're seeking, and they start realizing that whatever is threatening Seacity, whatever is threatening the water dwellers, is threatening the animals on land as well. So basically, it is a threat that is affecting the entire animal kingdom. The other thing they realize is how much they actually have in common with these animals from the surface. And the single greatest similarity between them is the fact that they seem very powerless over the fates of their worlds. It seems like whatever it is that is threatening them is beyond their control, which sounds very grim, and to some extent it is. But Seacity Rising is a story of hope and friendship and just self-development, building self-confidence, and the power of unity, basically, how much impact pulling together can have, even when it comes to what seems your inevitable fate. What seems that you can't control becomes to some extent controllable to some extent if you pull together. So I'm going to read you a scene from the book without further ado. I'm not gonna, I could read more like a revelation kind of scene towards the end, but I think it's more interesting if I leave that up to you guys, if you choose to, if you choose to actually read the book. So I think it would be more interesting at this moment if I read one of the more fun kind of scenes, where Bobak, Lee, Lo, and Dr. Goldberg are on land, and they have been treading many, many miles, and they are very tired, and they decide to sit down and have a rest. Okay, so this is chapter 7, Tiny Wars, page 116. So here we go. Still, they plowed on and on with whatever might they had to make it across the meadow, and emerged finally, triumphantly, onto solid ground. And as promised, there it was, the sandy dirt road, stretching long and wide, twisting and turning, curving and bending, paving their way ahead to the green ruins. They tried to go further, really, they did. But at long last, when their pace had slackened, and they could tread no more, they unanimously decided to take refuge under the cool shadow cast by the large shriveling leaves of the willow tree just to their right. Even Lee needed no convincing this time. So they let their bodies slump warily against the trunk as they caught their breath. Bobak, who came up behind them last, let himself warily thump into a comfortable squat, and was just about to close his eyes and let sleep carry him away when all of a sudden he heard a tiny noise. He glimpsed around, up and down, but saw nothing. Just as he was about to dismiss the sound as a figment of his overcooked imagination, he heard it again, this time squeakier than before. He had to really squint and strain his eyes to see the two tiny black creatures on the ground right next to him. By the expression he could barely make out on their tiny faces and the way they were shaking their minute fists in the air, he could tell they were very unhappy. But he could not exactly make out the words in their jumbled rush of exasperated screeches. So he got closer, and this is what he heard. "Hey! Hey, you! You ruined our sand tower!" the little creature was saying. Bedazzled, the frog rose, and his eyes caught a glimpse of the tens of little jutting sand mounds he'd failed to notice before. Of course, these were anthills, home to some of the tiniest of all earthly creatures. The blood rushed to his head when he suddenly realized the sand structure had crumbled under his weight. What he had sat on was not an accidental cushiony heap of sand, he realized, but a tower that had probably taken these ants weeks to build. "Oh dear me, I'm terribly sorry," he offered. "Sorry doesn't cut it, bucko!" "Just be grateful he didn't sit on you," interjected Lee, who was now next to the frog with her cousin. "Was that a threat?" said one of the ants. "Bring it on, lady!" cried the other one. "Calm down. Now how about we help you rebuild it?" Lo weighed in, trying to defuse the situation. "Fine, but you need to follow our design to the dot. One grain out of place and we're all in big trouble with the queen, you hear?" So began the expedient reconstruction. Plow, pile, pat, repeat. Sounded simple enough, but it was anything but. Every grain of sand had to be positioned in ways both meticulous and calculated. All wrong, try again. That grain is not dry enough. No, not like that. The ants kept squealing orders at them. About 20 minutes into the reconstruction, the ants were no longer satisfied with the sand quality of Bobak's heap. So they instructed the frog to gather fresh grains from the uncharted patch of ground on the west side of their anthills. That was when Bobak came across yet another ant, shaking furiously and screeching inaudible words. The frog crouched down and invited the ant to shin up his hand and brought the little fellow closer to his ear. Hey, what are you doing helping them? I'm afraid I accidentally destroyed their towers, so we considered it only fair to help rebuild it. You fool! They are only building that tower to destroy my colony, and you're helping them do it! Squealed the ant, aggravated. You're not with them? Me? With the AAU? Don't be ridiculous! The ant harumphed. They're a bunch of ruthless bullies. Do I look like one of them to you? Well, you all seem to have a common attitude problem, Bobak said in his mind rather than out loud. Regardless, the frog's curiosity piqued, so he had no choice but to ask. The AAU? The Alliance of Ants United? Our sworn enemies. I'm from the good colony next door, the UAA, the United Ants Alliance. I'm sure you're exaggerating. How could a mere tower destroy your colony? Exaggerating? Ha! Spoken like someone who doesn't know the first thing about war. Clearly, they need a vantage point to keep watch over us. And when the time is right, bam! They'll be all over my nest, just like that. But we'll get them back. You'll see. We have plans of our own, too. What plans? As if I'd tell you. So you can go and report back to the AAU? Just stop helping them, all right? And with that, the ant scuttled away. So, that was the scene I chose to read for you today. I hope you enjoyed that. And, any comments, any questions, any feedback, I would love to receive it, and I will answer them as soon as possible. And I hope to read for you again very soon. Just let me know what you thought, and that's it. See you again soon, I hope. Bye.